What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwall here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk. And there's just something about the Underdog. You know about that. But today we have a very special guest. Hailing from Santa Maria, California. We did our research. This guest is a retired United States Air Force officer and the first female pilot selected to fly as part of the United States Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron, also better known as the Thunderbirds, a speaker and advocate on behalf of patients with tick-borne illnesses. The one and only Miss Nicole Malkowski. How are you doing today, ma'am? How's the day been today so far for you?
The day is going well. I'll be honest, I'm staying home today. I've got a kid sick home from school, so I'm doing my mom duties and very honored to do so.
Hey, very honored to do so. I hope the little one gets better soon and that you don't have to do your mom duties as much and you can enjoy your time. I'm sure being home is a nice little break from the regular work day. Now, Nicole, I'm very interested. Could you tell us a little more about, your upbringing and then how eventually did the military come into play?
Yeah, so I was actually, as you noted, born in Santa Maria, California, moved to Southern California in junior high, and then moved to Las Vegas, Nevada in high school. But big picture, I was very lucky to be born into a solid middle class family with two parents, who were married. And I had two grandfathers who had both served in the military. So we were kind of your typical, middle class American family, the type who would go to the Veterans Day parade or would go to the local air show when it came to town. And I grew up in a family that honored, if you will, military service.
Mhm.
And I always went to those parades and I would watch the color guard march and think that their uniforms were so neat. And I liked how they all worked together. And then I went to an air show and realized, wow, you can fly airplanes and serve in the military. And so that dream of becoming a fighter pilot was actually born when I was about 5 years old. And at that point, it just became, if you will, a bit of a maniacal focus on my part. What do I need to do to become a fighter pilot someday? Now, unbeknownst to my 5-year-old self, I didn't realize it was against the law for women to be fighter pilots until the early 1990s. But it didn't really, sink into a kid's head, right? So I focused on things like the Civil Air Patrol, joining Air Force Junior ROTC, taking flying lessons, and finding my way to the Air Force Academy.
And is it true, Nicole, that you were 16 years old when you took your first solo flight?
Indeed, I did. I soloed before I got my driver's license. That is a true fact.
Wow. And, speak of a trailblazer, an underdog, does June 2005 ring a bell for you at all?
Yes, I think that's about the time I was selected to become an Air Force Thunderbird pilot.
Yep, as you applied and were accepted as a Thunderbird pilot, becoming the first female pilot to do so. I have to ask, what were the emotions that, were going through your head when you were accepted and made history, Nicole?
Well, I think the first part would be a little bit of disbelief, right? I mean, it's statistically improbable that anybody becomes a Thunderbird pilot. Obviously, it's not impossible, and I'm remain very grateful to this day for the leadership and the chain of command that was in place at that time. Who saw fit, I think, to select me for that mission. But I have to say, it was a lot of disbelief, which was quickly overcome by, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now, and what have I gotten myself into? I was thoroughly unprepared for the amount of public and media attention that would come. And I think too, it's a very unique and difficult type of flying. I mean, the training is a very difficult and can be somewhat stressful at times. So I think there was a little bit of what have I gotten myself into, but also tons of excitement, right? What an absolute honor, what an absolute privilege, and what a huge responsibility.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and I don't know how anyone should react. I think everyone's reactions would be different, but my first reaction to something so astounding would be disbelief, and then how do I be the best at this? Which obviously you were the best at what you did. Now I'm very interested. What advice would you give to young individuals aspiring to pursue a career in aviation or aerospace, particularly those facing barriers, kind of like you did with whether that be gender or background?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing to remind yourself, right, is that it's your dream. You're doing this for yourself. Now, I never became a fighter pilot to prove a point to anybody else or to make history as the first woman Thunderbird pilot. I did it because it was a dream I had had since I was 5 years old. And I like to remind young people, don't ever let anybody else, any other organization, any team, any company, define what success looks like for you. Only you get to define success for yourself. And I think one of the most important things to do, especially when maybe you're feeling like there might be some challenges, or maybe you're feeling like there aren't a lot of people like you in that certain career field, is to just surround yourself with positive people, right? Surround yourself with people who believe in your dream as much as you do. And I think those kinds of people are the ones that can keep us focused and on the right path, towards achieving our goal or our target.
100%. Now, I'm very interested in this question as well. And if you would mind sharing, what challenges did you face as a trailblazer in a traditionally male dominated field? And then how did you overcome them, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you're a minority, like, let's be honest, I started flying fighter aircraft in the 1990s. That was just when this first tranche of female fighter pilots, the first tranche of us came on board. I would say, generally speaking, people were supportive or neutral. But it is human nature, I think, in all of us to focus on, right, the negatives sometimes and the naysayers. And I think one of the hardest things to do is to make sure that I was seeking out the positive influences, seeking out the people who were, very supportive. I always think it's important to put into something into context here. I do have stories, of course, of chauvinism, right? That women can't fly planes. Maybe they're not strong enough to be fighter pilots. They're going to mess up the bro culture if they join our team. All of those things, of course, were said, and I had to go through. But I always like to put into context, right? Like, every single person that was teaching me to fly the F-15E, the people that commanded me, the people that taught me how to fly the F-16, the people who I flew on the Thunderbirds, were really great men, right? Great men who made me a great pilot, a great officer, and taught me how to be a better teammate. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, it is human nature for us to sometimes focus when those negative naysayers come through. And I think the biggest thing for me was I never tried to let those people, I never let them see me sweat, right? Now, I'm not going to lie. Like, there were times that I went home after work, put my face in a pillow, and, might have had a tear or two, when I was a lot younger and before I had the credibility and stuff, in the aircraft. I think that was the hardest part. And what I tried to do was just focus on that, become a master of your craft, put your energy and your time and your focus into just becoming extremely good at what you're being asked to do, right? If that's being a fighter pilot, great. If that's being, an actor, great, whatever that might be. And so I tried to, whenever I'd find my mind drifting towards some of the negativity or the negative people, I would come back to one, it's your dream. I get to define my own success. And I need to put my money where my mouth is, right? I need to become a master of my craft.
And you're such an inspiration for so many women, and women who are, any minority who's against the odds. And I think it is hard in life when we often, people are going to naysay. And as you mentioned, Nicole, that's just what comes in life. And I think you got to ignore those to a point and focus on the positive people that are you surround yourself with, like you mentioned, and really try and focus on, hey, this is my goal. I'm not going to let someone bring me down. I'm going to rise, shine, and conquer. And obviously, you rose, shined, and conquered in those three steps. Now, I'm very interested as well as a combat veteran. You really got to see it all. How has your military service, influenced your approach to resiliency, adaptability in both personal and professional aspects of your life? As you are, you're a speaker, you're an advocate, you do so much more as well. How has your, military service influenced that?
I think my military service has absolutely shaped me into the person I am today and has impacted everything I've done, the past, present, and certainly will continue to impact me, in the future. Making that transition from the military to the civilian life, in my case, was rather unexpected. It happened due to a medical issue that I'm sure we'll get into in a second, but it was very unexpected. It was very, unwelcome. And I had to really dig deep into that resilience toolkit that you were talking about. And I often tell people, the reason I was able to make it through those difficult medical times and reinvent myself successfully is 100% because of the characteristics and the traits that I honed as a fighter pilot. So things like commitment, discipline, determination, things like focus, confidence, all of those things I had to lean on in order to make it through my very severe illness and to find a way to move forward with my new life. I'm doing something now that I would have never anticipated that I'd be doing, but this is where life brought me. And it is those traits and characteristics from the military. And I think specifically that fighter pilot mindset that have allowed me to do it with as much grace as I could muster. But I'm certainly feel like I'm doing it successfully. So I hope it's a good example to other veterans as well.
100%. And going into that, it's crazy how things just happen in life, and we have to adapt to them. And obviously, you're a huge advocate, and also a patient of the tick-borne illness. Would you mind talking a little more about how that's kind of shaped you into who you are as a person today, and kind of the challenges that came with that, and
Yeah.
how can someone be an advocate for something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you had told me when I was younger as a totally healthy fighter pilot that a single tick bite was going to nearly kill me, leave me chronically ill, and cost me my career, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy, right? But that is indeed what happened. I went from a physically fit, mentally fit, spiritually fit, lieutenant colonel fighter pilot to someone who was completely broken overnight, 100% dependent on other people for all of my activities of daily living. I was bedridden and housebound for a year. I struggled to, walk, talk, read, and write. And I remember that the day that my military medical retirement came, it was 29 December 2017. I was home alone. There was no ceremony. Some of my retirement paperwork was actually mailed to me in the mail, and nobody from the Air Force called. And I have to say to this day that there is a deep pain kind of associated with that feeling of abandonment. That I went through one of the most difficult things that was completely out of my control, and I was kind of left to reinvent myself. And I had some very dark days, and I think it's okay for people to feel sad and for people to grieve. I cried, I felt sad, I let it out. I laid on that couch and I thought through this, who am I if I'm not wearing my nation's uniform? What is my contribution to society if I'm not a fighter pilot? How am I going to provide for my family now? All of these worries. And I was left with a lot of chronic symptoms. So it became, who's going to hire me? What is it that I can actually do? And as I laid there, literally feeling sorry for myself, because that's the truth of where I was, it hit me. These words came to my head, this phrase, and it's kind of become the mantra that I live my life by now. And that's why I want to share it with all of you. The words that came to my head were yield to overcome. Yield to overcome. And what that meant was not surrendering, quitting, or giving up, but having full acceptance of where I was. Not ruminating on the past. I didn't ask to be sick. I didn't ask to be misdiagnosed. I didn't ask to become chronically ill. The real question is, what is it that you can do right now with what you have, to move forward? And it was that kind of yield to overcome mindset change, I think, that helped me go, okay, this is not an ending. This is simply a new starting point. As pilots like to say, the runway behind you is always unusable. All you've got is the runway that's in front of you. And there was like an aha moment that day. And that's the day I got off the couch and started this new life.
Wow. And I was going to ask you your underdog moment at the end of this podcast, but I kind of think, Nicole, that is,
Probably it.
probably one of the best underdog moments we've had on this podcast so far, if not the best. And you might just take the cake on that, because that's where you really dig deep. And underdog talk, it is okay to be, hard times are going to happen.
Yes.
How do you deal with those? How do you pick yourself up? And how do you become ultimately a better person? And, it's always insane to me. I never realized until I actually was bit by a tick too. I got lucky that it got diagnosed quickly. I had the bullseye. I had everything. I had the
Wonderful.
antibiotics quickly. But I've known my neighbor, he didn't get diagnosed immediately, and it affected him for the rest of his life as well. So I think it definitely needs to be something that people need to be aware of, that a simple tick can do a lot of damage. And that's a very true and unfortunate
Absolutely.
thing. But I'm so glad that you are a fighter, Nicole, and you're an advocate. We need advocates like you, obviously, to get awareness to this topic. How do you stay motivated and continue to challenge yourself after achieving so many significant milestones in your career? How do you keep on pushing after being setting history, doing this, getting so many awards in the military? How do you keep being motivated, Nicole, to be a public speaker, to be an advocate? I'm just astounded. How do you do all that?
Well, it's interesting you bring this up. I actually posted a social media post today on this idea of motivation. And there's two kinds of motivation, right? There's intrinsic and extrinsic. And I think when I was younger and hungry and trying to move up the chain and go after that next thing, a lot of it was kind of this extrinsic motivation, right? The promotion, the next thing, the award, whatever. And I think part of that just comes with the immaturity of youth. And then as you get older and you go through these life crucible experiences like the one I just mentioned, and you gain more credibility, in your become a master of your craft, I think it starts to transition more to like this intrinsic, motivation. And I think part of it is just, this is my personality. I cannot be idle. There has to be something I'm working on or working towards. It is part of my DNA. It's part of how I've been since I was 5 years old, wanting to become, a fighter pilot. And I think another thing is, you know, that life or death experience from the tick bite was a crucible experience. Like, it fundamentally changed who I was. There's no bouncing back to my old self because she doesn't exist anymore, right? I'm forged into something I think better. Um, I came out as someone who's more compassionate to other people. I came out as somebody who is more willing to set boundaries, right? And to take care of myself and my family and not say yes to everything. I came out of it with a clarity on the things that I value and why that I would have never had I been sick. And going through that wasn't just me as a patient, my whole family went through it. My children, I didn't interact with from the age of 5 to the age of 7. And so when you say what motivates me, it's them. I
Mhm.
want to teach them that hard times happen
Yeah.
and that with the right mindset that you can grow and that you can leap forward and that when doors close, other doors open. That you literally have no idea what you're capable of doing unless you're willing to give it a try. And I think it's my children's faces every morning that get me up off the couch doing what I do.
Well, your children are so lucky to have such an amazing mother who's a fighter. And Underdog Talk in the previous episode with Dakota Myers, Dakota talked about how hard times and difficult times shape us into who we are. And I think, Nicole mentioned that as well. At hard times and difficult times, accept it. Accept it because that's going to shape you into a better person ultimately. And that's going to create you into the person who you become. And we can't control what life throws at us. That's the sad, unfortunate part of the thing we call life, Nicole. And we get thrown baseballs and curveballs. We just got to hit back, and we got to hit some home runs and try and keep our head above the water. I think that's what they say.
Yield to overcome.
Yield to overcome. And it is very interesting, Underdog Talk, that I always think about this, and Nicole is a prime example of this. When you go through those hard times, it's almost like a motto comes through it. Like when I was going through my mental health issues, I got the phrase, "This too shall pass." It's almost like when you go through these hard times, you get these cool motivational things that you can just keep with yourself for the rest of your life. And really, whenever you have a hard time, you're like, "Hey, I went through this before. This too shall pass." And Nicole's quote, I love that. Now, my final two questions for you is, what is your biggest tip for someone who's looking to join the military like you once were, ma'am?
I think believe in yourself. I
Mhm.
think I passed up a lot of opportunities and maybe didn't gain the full military experience because I had some of that imposter syndrome, right? That
Oh,
kind of fear of failure or fear of taking risk or fear of being judged by my peers. I would say go for it from day one. Believe in yourself. And the other thing is believe those who believe in you. There were a lot of times in my military career that people were cheering me on, but I was like, demurring, like, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm ready to upgrade to instructor pilot. I'm not sure I'm ready to apply to be a Thunderbird pilot. You know what? When people believe in you, that is a giant hint from the universe that you have what it takes. People aren't going to push you in a direction towards failure, right? They're there to nudge you along, give you the resources, give you the support, give you the training that you need. So believe those who believe in you and just get ready for the adventure of a lifetime. The military is just full of extraordinary, wild opportunities to do things you could never imagine, to be a part of a team that you'll never be a part of again. And I think, to even be a part of history. And that's kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. And, it's interesting. We had Rear Admiral Mike Maniser on the podcast, and he talked about that imposter syndrome as well and embrace it. Embrace it.
I love it.
I love that attitude of, hey, you think you might not belong, but you belong, and you need to conquer. And I love all those things that you just mentioned as well, Nicole. And I mean, thank you from the bottom of my heart and from Underdog Talk for serving the greatest country on earth. And thank you so much for all you've done serving this great country. So thank you from the bottom of my heart as well. And I mean, just a true honor and privilege to speak with you. Now, before we go, the floor is yours. Where can we find your Instagram, your social media? Do you have any books coming out? The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I do have a website. It's NicoleMalachowski.com. I post several times a week on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My handle on all three of them is at Real Malachowski. It's important you go to Real Malachowski in the verified accounts because unfortunately there's imposter accounts out there. But I post several times a week, talk about leadership, teamwork, elite team performance, as well as resilience and reinvention. And don't forget to do your tick checks. You can come to my social media as well to learn about how to prevent the bite.
100%. First person to follow Nicole on Instagram or Twitter will send you a nice little care package out. Stay tuned to date up on some of the most important leadership aspects out there. And Nicole is a leader in and out of social media. I don't know if that makes sense. Nicole is just a true leader, a true American hero. So Nicole, thank you so much for your time taking to come on the podcast. Guys, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this podcast. Until next time, the woman who set history and the underdog out.